Welcome back from lunch and from a presentation that made me hungrier than before. We're going to start with something simple. We're going to go from policy to proof, essentially how to be lazy and automate at least as much as we can from continuous assessments. But first, because it's after lunch and most of us are a little bit sleepy, have my coffee here, let's do some audience participation. And let's make this session a little bit more participatory because I liked what Doug did just now. So hands up, how many of you are technical? Okay, something like 90%. How many of you would say you're not technical at all? Nobody. Okay, so we have a very technical group. How many of you would you say you're consultants? Okay, about half. How many of you are internal but in very large organizations? Okay, the rest, normal. Okay, cool. So I asked all of this because in order to give you like specific examples, but let's start from the basics. Standards are amazing. The way I see security standards, or for this particular example, standards or controls frameworks, the way I see this is a high-level definition of what good looks like, right? Some sort of policy, some sort of North Star, where we're going. I usually make the case that they are the closest thing we, as security professionals, have to the equivalent of the aviation industry safety controls. When an airline crash happens, what do the aviation industry, no matter if you're Boeing or anyone else, do? They come together, they analyze the crash, and then they say, all together, this is the new policy, this is the new standard. In my mind, this is the closest thing we have as application security people, right? We band together and we create DSOMM, SAMM, ASVS, et cetera, et cetera. And this is amazing because just looking at this room, only between Timo, the SAMM team, there is 30, 40 years, 50, or more than 100 years worth of experience, all codified in like what the rest of us should do, right? And the standards are amazing. I've been using both SAMM and DSOMM continuously to create my 30, 60, 90-day roadmaps in several places with pretty good success. However, there is a cost. Everybody here so far has talked about how to do things manually. And this, well, we all know the cost of manually doing things manually. But in order to talk about automation, first we need to have examples. So SAMM says, in order to have a great deployment process, what do we need to do? Well, we need to define it and formalize it. Then we need to automate it so that it's repeatable. And finally, we need to verify the integrity of all deployed software automatically, right? That's fantastic. That is really, really good for someone who tells other people what to do. So a consultant, a middle manager, or somebody who does assessments. If I parachute into an organization today, I have no idea if there is a deployment process, let alone if it's formalized in code or whatever. Usually what happens is I parachute into an organization and I need to have like 300 meetings with everybody to figure out if like several teams have a deployment process. If I am very, very technical and I can understand whatever CI/CD system they have, perhaps I can do this manually by reading manifests myself. Obviously, none of that scales. If I have 300 teams, or who here has double-digit teams to deal with? Triple-digit? 10, 20, 30, less than 100. Who here has more than 100 teams to deal with? One person. I do not want to be you, my friend. But I work with people like that, right? Like the normal ratio of application security professionals to developers is 1 to several hundred. I've seen 1 to several thousand. Let's not go there. So if you are 1 to several hundred developers or several hundred teams, there is no way you're going to find out what they do. You have no idea. If you're using SAMM from our friends at Codific here, perhaps you can go to SAMM and find out all the assessments that they've done. But then you are again like in trouble, because how do the developers gain access to SAMM? It's again a game of broken telephone that all boils down to someone who needs to do work gets asked, have you done the work? And it is in their hands to say, yeah, trust me, don't worry, I've done it, it's fine, it's everything automated, secure, don't look here. I just want to like go back to like do whatever it is I was doing. The last thing I had from a developer was, man, I have children, I really don't want to do this, this pays my bills, pays my mortgage, bye. Similarly for DSOMM, this is not a something. For DSOMM, to have a decent deployment process, you need to do one, define it, build and test it sandboxed, pin the artifacts, generate SBOMs, sign them, and sign the artifacts. All of these are questions you usually ask humans. Just to make DSOMM not feel excluded here by busing only some. So this is all manual. Standards define the what we need to do, and the how is left to us. However, because the how is left to us, either we solve the how with automation of questionnaires. So here's a spreadsheet, here's a website in the form of a spreadsheet, here's something. Or for very, very mature organizations, what they've done is they've done some custom solutions. Like if you have any enterprise SaaS, sometimes it brings in cheat sheets or SAMM or PCI or something, right? If you have an enterprise CNAP, for example, like Wiz, sometimes it brings in policy. If you use Vanta, it brings in some sort of high-level PCI or some sort of automated testing for this. But nothing for DSOMM and SAMM, and even those integrations are not usually very deep. So what you end up having to do is create custom solutions. So you go into your CI/CD and you say, hey, I'm going to create like 300 lines of integrations to parse every single YAML I have and cross-reference these with a team inventory and find out if I'm missing something. Yeah, guess what? We're AppSec people. We're not DevOps engineers, or at least I know one only person with a DevOps background here. So all these integrations are brittle, that being the key word, right? I've done this many times, and it has broken 3 months later many times. I know this from Funks. I know it has happened in lots of other people in the industry. And then we go to the next one. So we've been thinking for a while, and we were saying like, hey, all these integrations we have been building again and again and again, or when we became managers, we got our teams to build again and again and again across every different organization we went, do the same thing. They connect to an API, download some metadata, and run tests on those metadata, because that's like what we do manually when we talk about a standard, right? Instead of connecting to an API, the API is a human, and the metadata is the question, do you totally do signing of SBOMs? At which point they will for sure reply, yes, go away, I don't want to see you again. So why am I talking about this and why I'm here? Well, I've been working on a solution to this problem for a very long time, since the pandemic, while a bunch of people went and did sourdough projects and baking. I did a small project called OpenCRE. Who knows what it is? Oh, hey, wow. I am so impressed. OK, cool. More than I expected or hoped. Thank you. So I went and did a small project OpenCRE, And then we found out from OpenCRE that, okay, cool, it works very well to influence a bunch of other applications, like again, Codific here and SAMM and DSOMM, thank you guys. But in the end, people just put it into spreadsheets. So after OpenCRE got a little bit of maturity and traction, I went and built a workflow engine that allows for just running arbitrary pieces of code with the goal of solving this problem. The only reason I came to these solutions is because I've been with OWASP since, 18 years? I was much younger when I started, that's the point. And yeah, and I had the capability to have like endless discussions with all of you. And it seems this problem has been very, very important. So as I said, we can start building a solution. This is the welcome to the world of tomorrow slide. We are square in the middle of an era of consolidation and platformization. That means that we, instead of having 300 systems across an organization, the organization itself wants to have 3 systems. At least that's where we see the market going to. The other thing is we have unified and well-documented APIs that we can query. And with AI, we can generate clients from them. So for example, if we change our thinking about standards from do I do X, and instead think about tests and say, find me the things that don't do X. For example, if I use a CI/CD system, we just need to find repos that do not have a CI pipeline, right? Then I don't comply with some, I forget what is the ID of the category, but that's it. Similar for SBOMs, right? If we use dependency track for coverage, we can cross-reference SBOMs and dependency track with our application CMDB, put them together and find what is missing, where we don't have SBOMs, hence comply with DSOMM. So here's how we go from vague policy to community test cases. As I said, do I enforce signing? This is a very general question, and a question that makes a human most likely to answer, yeah, bro, no worries, we signed everything, I signed the check yesterday. Because they just want you to go away. Otherwise, if they answer no, they have more work. So instead, you just say, hey, can I have a small script that connects to my, let's say, Kubernetes clusters and finds clusters that have no SIG-store? Do we know what SIG-store is? Well, from the name, I guess. A couple of people. It's a piece that, a deployment that sits on Kubernetes makes sure that all the images have a signature and are signed. So we have no SIG-store in enforcement mode. Essentially, we allow things to run on production or in some cluster that are not signed. Easy? Cool. If I can do this for one cluster, I can probably do this for all clusters. And if Kubernetes is the way we go to production, that would make sense. Does this change in mindset make sense for you guys? Right?
If you get access to the cluster. If you get access to the cluster, yes. That is a big problem.
It is a big problem.
Because they want to hide.
They do want to hide. Usually, if you have clusters, you have an index of what clusters there are. And if you give somebody a piece of code to run and keep running, that returns heartbeats, both for negatives and positives, and the fact that it has run, so they cannot just make it stop. We've seen this work. So next one. So here's an assurance framework, what I would like to call the community flow, because this is what I propose. Back to the Kubernetes example. Ingest metadata from the cluster. Tell me what's running. Test this metadata. You can do this with a million ways to validate that something exists or has a specific value in JSON or YAML, preferred JSON. Essentially, the test can be cell or custom code, enrich this data. I'll show you how in a second. And finally, unless you report it to somebody, it is useless information, so report it, it makes sense. So this is the architecture again. Download metadata from a system, query it, enrich or do some magic, and in the end, profit by reporting it. At this point, usually when I talk to people about this, they think I'm crazy because it sounds like a lot of work. Who would connect to all my clusters? Who would find all my EC2 instances? Why would I ever do that? Well, we already do this, right? We don't need to achieve 100% from day 0. It is an iterative process, same as maturing from SAMM or DSOMM. So, for example, you can start by cheating a little bit and do something simpler. Say like, hey, I have a secret scanner in my CI/CD and it found something, right? What if I start correlating the findings from my secret scanner with something else? This is my unit test with DSOMM and SAMM. This is my unit test. If it finds something, congrats, you have initial secrets management, right? Because if I have secrets in my code, guess what? I'm probably not managing them the way that I should be managing them. Similarly, if you have any ASPM or anything that alerts on SLAs, you just need to pull the data from it and the test is existence of alerts past SLA. Make sense? Cool, I see people nodding. And same way for any aggregation you have. However, all of these are tests. If I need to write a specific test for every single DSOMM activity or a SAMM activity, I'm going to be white-haired and still writing unit tests. So instead, what we can do, and if I need to also port this unit test for PCI and NIST and ISO, then I need like a team of 100 people just writing unit tests. It doesn't matter. But instead, what we can do is use a standard format that is queryable, so we can create a data lake, and then use a knowledge graph that has already all the connections between the standards to pivot between standards. I'll show you exactly how to do this in code in a second. OCSF starts for Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework. It is what AWS uses internally to do all their security data lakes. It has been open sourced and donated to the Linux Foundation. It is a massive, massive collection of standards, of formats, but it's also, because it's all JSON and also gRPC, it allows you to have a data lake, simple data lake that you can query. My favorite part about OCSF is that it supports compliance findings. And compliance findings can have all sorts of standardized things about evidence, signed evidence, things like that. So we have our data lake, and then we do mappings with OpenCRE. Not going to explain what OpenCRE is, you know. And then every test case we build for SAMM is useful for everything else. Make sense so far? So essentially, I build test cases for CREs instead of specific test cases for SAMM or DSOMM or ASVS or the next standard that we do together. And with all of this, it sounds too good to be true. So why don't we see some code and demo, since all of you are technical? I'm not going to spare you the code. As I said, this is a conversation, so feel free to ask questions. There are a million workflow engines out there. You can do this with N8N, etc. I developed Smithy. I know how Smithy works very well, so I did it on Smithy because it was faster, right? And it was easier for me, at least, to generate components. What we see here is a simple workflow. We clone something. I was running SEMgrep on it. SEMgrep takes too long for a simple presentation demo, so instead we're going to use a sample vulnerability generator that will generate CWE 310. It is about cryptography, just to keep with the secrets management situation, okay? Then we enrich the info. This is our unit test. Do I have secrets management? Then we're going to correlate with OpenCRE. And finally, we're going to report it on the command line so we can all see it together. The OpenCRE enricher does a very, very simple thing. Can you see this from the back? Awesome. Does a very, very simple thing. Given a CWE, go to OpenCRE, traverse the graph, find me the nearest SAMM and DSOMM. Let's not talk about ASVS yet. And just add an annotation with the ID. Super simple, super quick. OpenCRE client, all of this is open source. That's why I'm showing you code. You can find it on Smithy Security. The only thing, and this is just a graph traverse situation, does nothing super fancy. It's a client in Go for OpenCRE. Now, where is my terminal? How do you know you're talking to a backend engineer? You see black and white. Super simple, run a workflow. It is the workflow I showed you.
Can you zoom a tiny bit?
Yes. Okay. Run a workflow. It is the workflow I showed you. Dump everything in a file called kitchen sink because it has all the standards. It's not about DSOMM or something. It's going to run a while depending on internet speed. In the meantime, here's the previous kitchen sink from earlier today. Why don't we find DSOMM? Again, remember, it was CWE 310. So relevant DSOMM. ASVS about cryptography, DSOMM about change management, with a link, and SAMM about secrets management. Make sense? Simple, quick correlation between things I already know about with the use of public and open source knowledge graphs with flexible, quick and easy unit tests. Now, this is what? 100 lines of code. Okay, 104 lines of code, super quick, 99% generated. If it says logger debug, it is generated. If it says fmt println, it is my crappy code. So my point being, we can, with the use of public infrastructure, and I'm 100% sure the AI agents that every single one of you has for free or already paid for, we can generate these things and write unit tests. Where the thing fails is if we only write the unit tests for us and our current organization, they're going to become very brittle and fail when we leave. If we contribute them upstream or create some tests for some, for specific things, perhaps we can all reuse them and things like that. They don't even have to be on Smithy, although it would be nice. We said DSOMM, SAMM as well. Again, secret management makes sense. It's still running. It's going to take a while. But as you see, we still have the same UIDs, which kind of makes sense, right? Like we only gave it one CWE for this specific demo. Any questions so far? That's why I said, like, perhaps it is a conversation. Yes?
Out of curiosity, and I think I understand, so I haven't played with OCSF too much, but my understanding is basically structure for, like a common schema for telemetry data, right? So event logs, different types of things like that.
Can
you repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, OCSF, is it a common schema for telemetry data?
Yeah.
It started like that.
Okay.
AWS being AWS, it got out of hand. And it is now a schema for pretty much anything you might want to do with security.
Okay, because that's where the second half of my question came from, because NIST has OSCAL, which is the Open Security Controls Assessment Language.
Yeah.
Which is what they use to structure anything for machine readable standard in XML, JSON, YAML, for compliance, controls, assessment findings, all of that kind of stuff. And it looked like they were complementary, but if OCSF is bleeding over into OSCAL, now I'm trying to figure out how they relate to each other or not.
Excellent question. So the question or the follow-up was, there is OSCAL, and how does OSCAL and OCSF mesh together? So OCSF OSCAL is mostly about only about controls evidence, and it is about abstract control evidence. It doesn't care that you have the control evidence is a screenshot or some bytes. Essentially, it is star format. OCSF, especially in, done, okay. It's exactly the same. So OCSF in the format here, if it is a host, it has very, very specific JSON format for the host. If it's a website, specific for this. If the finding is a vulnerability, it is, congratulations, here's like 300 fields for a vulnerability. So as long as you make the effort, which that's why I showed Smithy, because we did, so long as you make the effort to map all of these things and create like some sort of framework around them, you have much more computer flexibility to do things. Instead of, hey, here's some bytes in a field, it's only useful to humans based on the description, good luck. Now, the other thing I want to show here, I want to talk about here, and I didn't have time to show as a very good demo, is a lot of SAMM and a lot of the standards are about documentation and existing of a process. Obviously, you cannot really show a process or test for a process with computers because, well, that's a process about humans. What you can do is you can read documentation or notes about the process or about the existence of specific parts of the process, and then use our very good friend GPT to say, please review those meeting notes for me. I will ask you a question. Here's the question. Do they even talked about threat modeling? Has threat modeling or some considerations about security been applied to this specific feature based on the meeting notes I gave you? Essentially create a very lightweight RAG. Once you do that, you can test for a process.
I think I was thinking exactly about that. I think a threat modeling process should end up with threads which end up in your Jira. So I would rather test Jira test with this, and that's a sort of a question also. Can you tell this to check if I have threat modeling tag in Jira recently added as an assurance, like, okay, they really did something. I don't care how you threat model it. As long as your threat models end up in your Jira, I'm fine with that. So.
Yes, but in that specific scenario, you are testing about the threat model having produced work, not having been done. If I'm changing it, if I'm changing CSS on a website, or if I'm creating dark mode for our application, or adding AI by just like integrating a third-party API that already has done everything, and I have no access to their threat model, then maybe there is nothing to be done. I think I broke Aram.
Then you're not doing threat modeling. Is that what you're saying? Okay, we can take this offline.
A ticket on Jira is a piece of work, at least in my mind, right? So depending.
If it's annotated, this is the outcome of threat modeling, and it's done, then you did threat modeling.
I see what you mean. Okay, fair enough. In that case, yes, you can do it. I've worked with some organizations where Jira is only for developers, middle management has their own toy, and threat modeling doesn't live there. But if you use, for example, Irus Risk or one of the people who organize the threat modeling thing after DC, you can integrate with their API and correlate between sprints on Jira and their API. Congratulations, we have a threat model.
That is a manual thing for every customer, no? I'm not saying it's useless, by the way. If you have
For every customer,
100 teams and one customer, you do it once, you don't assess 100 teams.
Exactly.
There you go, scaling. So it's super useful. But
Yeah.
it is you cannot you could also start building a library probably.
yes.
And that would be my next question. Do you have a library of scripts where people could also even share their own?
So yes and no, right? This is one of the reasons why I showed Smithy. It is already a library of connectors that run either any security tool you want or write or have like bidirectional Jira situations. And you can already use OCSF and do enrichment. We can, and we keep maintaining Smithy, so we keep adding like things to it. And with one enricher that is 100 lines, you can cross-correlate between anything the tool said and any of the standards, and you're done. Hence why you can have tests. Yes, as a consultant, if you do this for every customer, you're not going to be doing anything else ever. But as a group of consultants, we could potentially open source a bunch of these things. Or if you have a customer that is large enough, then it makes sense for you to build it over the course of a year for like one specific organization. I mean, economies of scale, right? Like for startup of 10 people with niche who also uses niche startups probably doesn't make sense. For like 5,000 person company, maybe it does.
I would like to answer this to the threat modeling question. What I'm measuring, because it's hard to measure Jira tickets, I'm measuring if a threat modeling happened. I'm measuring if a threat modeling happened by just having a label in the Confluence, and I search for the label, and then I know this team never did a threat modeling in the last 2 years, or I know it did it every second week.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I do it.
Which is great, right? It is the way I did it 2 jobs ago as well. Jira has a very, very strong Go client where you can search with JQL. So essentially, if you can search something on the Jira like dashboard, you just copy paste this on like 100 lines of Go, and that's it. And you can alert on that. If you alert on that with like your bash script, probably it's gonna fail, right? Like at some point it's gonna, like, it only works with Jira, it only tests for DSOMM, it only tests for one thing. If you build it as part of a library, perhaps it makes sense. At least that's what I'm doing and what I intend to keep doing. I think it makes sense for me at least. Build a library of connectors, and that's it. By the way, what you just said, it was literally here on my notes. Cool. So, call to action, as we said. I couldn't find a better name. Open AppSec Assurance Initiative, OAAI. Has AI. Hey, look at that. So we have a strong evidence format. If we stop building the solutions in silos, makes sense. next steps pretty much is there anybody beyond Timo who's already doing this?
I'm not doing it
Ask me again
exactly
in
in your format, but yeah.
This looks interesting.
Okay. We'll ask again in 2 months. And cool. And if you did this, would you contribute test cases? Does it make sense for you?
Contribute to test cases.
Hmm?
Where is there a GitHub?
There is an open source GitHub. Maybe it will be an OWASP project eventually if we make it useful for this particular scenario. I know the ASVS team, for example, tried to do this at some point, but didn't quite work because they used like unit tests and unit testing frameworks like Playwright, but that's extremely custom. Anyway, I showed you what's possible. I know for a fact that most funks, or at least most of the Facebook, Metas, Googles, etc., I talk to have something similar built internally. I know that every single bank has something similar built internally, either on some vendor solution or extremely custom. So we know that this is a problem that a lot of people face. Just not a lot of people have the ability to solve because, well, if you give me the engineering capacity of Google, we can solve anything, right? Like, I saw Seba's face like light up. But yeah, that's the point. That's kind of my call to action. If we can do this, like the only way to solve this collectively is together. Otherwise, Timo ends up alone in Germany just trying to hack something. And Spyros in London, and Seba in Belgium, and Aram in Belgium, and stuff like that. And that's it. More questions?